And I realized the most important thing I can do for my sons is to teach them. Because I now understand that my days upon this earth are limited. And I don't know how limited they are, but I know I want to be ready, as our guest said this morning, because no man knows the hour. So I know that my legacy will be left in what I teach them. And for a long time I thought, well, you know, my dad didn't really teach me that much. He was a guy that liked to do it for me. And I understand that it's easier often to do things for your children than it is to get them to do them themselves or teach them how to do them. I mean, it's a heck of a lot easier for me to go in and clean my kids' rooms than to get them to clean their own rooms. No question about it. And I thought, well, my dad he really wasn't a teacher in that regard. But now as I reflect on it and I understand that there are a lot of things I know how to do, it had to be my dad. And I always think about one thing in particular. I used to change the oil on my cars. I did that for years. For 20 years, I used to change the oil on my cars. I haven't changed the oil on a car in I don't know how long. I don't know if I could do it anymore. But it actually was kind of rewarding. You know, you went down and you bought the oil and you bought the filter and you crawled under the car and you changed the oil and you got the oil. In the old days, you take it and you dump it along the fence post where the weeds were. God forbid now that we dump used oil on the ground, but and you finished the job and you started your car and it was clean, fresh oil and you were good for another 5,000 miles or whatever. And I got to thinking, where did I learn to change the oil in my car? It was my dad. Because among the many things that he did, he was a Renaissance man in his own way. He was a mechanic, a master mechanic. So I appreciate that role as educator more and more. So self-giving love educates. Secondly, self-giving love stimulates. And I think about that scriptural verse, stimulate one another to love and good deeds. Prime the pump in the people whose lives we touch. Stimulate your children. Stimulate those around you to acts of mercy and service and compassion. Whet the appetite. One of the lives that my father lived was as a social worker. He worked with the county of Sacramento. He worked with migrant laborers. And I remember very distinctly on occasion, he'd grab me and say, Ken, how'd you like to take a little ride with me? We're going to go up the Sacramento River, and I've got to visit a few migrant camps today. And the impressions and the images of those camps and those people and the way he reached out to them and their need and their response really was so emblazoned on my mind and heart. I think it was a very, very critical factor in my trying to discern my call to become a minister. It left a mark on me. And, my dad was a minister too. At one point he did send away for one of those $25 certificates. There for a while people were doing that until the IRS kind of cracked down on them. But I guess I became kind of a real minister, as much as you can be a real minister. And I think the way he stimulated me through those kinds of experiences was so important. So self-giving love, sacrificial love, it educates, it stimulates. Thirdly, it communicates. I was watching that interview with Russert and Brokaw, and Russert wrote this book, and he said, Big Russ, oh, what a great guy. He was always there for me, anything I needed, and do anything for me, but, my dad never expressed his feelings. He never expressed his feelings at all. And I think there's this mythology that, women or mothers, they verbalize their feelings and men show their love. They show their love, but they don't say anything. But I think it's important for men to verbalize, to communicate on occasion. And Russert, when he talked about his father, he had written this book, Wisdom of Our Fathers, and he sent his father a copy of the book. And he called him about a week later, and he said, Dad, you read the book? He said, well, I'm reading the first chapter tonight. I'll let you know what I think, kind of a cool response. And then he saw his father about a month later, and he went to give him the typical handshake instead of a kiss, kind of the handshake and the half-hearted hug like men do. And he said his dad just grabbed him and embraced him, this full bear hug. First time he'd ever done that. He said, son, I love you. Son, first time he'd ever heard him say that. And the amazing thing is, Tim Russert said, that changed my life. Now this is a somebody. This is an overachiever. This is somebody who you think his self-esteem and self-confidence would be so high. Doesn't need anything. But he said, when my dad said, I love you, it changed my life. It changed my life. I'm not the best at it. I joke around with my boys. I've mentioned this old television commercial before. I love you, Dad. No, son, you're not getting my Bud Light. We do that. We joke around because it's hard for us to communicate our love. I don't know why that is, but I think as we get older, maybe we soften up a little bit. But self-giving love, it educates, it stimulates, it communicates, and it congratulates. It congratulates. It goes along with the communication. That we say things and we give things. We give our affirmation. We give our approval. We build people up. We build our children up. And again, I remember an old friend of mine. He was another overachiever. He was a doctor, and I remember him sharing with me one time, and he said, Ken, he said, growing up, I was a great student. I never got into trouble. I did everything right. My dad never once did I hear him say, good job. Good job. I'm proud of you. Never once said that. And isn't it funny how we need that as men? We need that as people. We need our fathers and our mothers to be encouraging us and affirming us and building us up, and how important it is. And what happens if we don't get it? It stays with us our whole lives. And I look out there and I see such a crisis of self-esteem in our world today, especially with our young people. No one there to say, I'm proud of you. And I mentioned that at Nell Gentry's memorial the other day. Some of you were here. What a marvelous gift she had for sharing that way. And I remember my sons being here on several occasions. Well, every time she saw them, she'd run to the back. And she didn't really know what they were doing sometimes. I mean, she just knew them. And she would run up and say, oh, honey, I'm so proud of you. She was proud of everybody. She really was. And she let them know it. And what a gift that is. To give credit, to say thanks, to look beyond ourselves as fathers, to look through the window instead of in the mirror congratulating ourselves. And when I look through the window of the lives of my children and others, of my own life, I see people out there that help make me a successful dad.